Chapter 42. In Wang Chang's room, all of the windows were shut and the door was bolted shut. The entire room was like an isolated world. And Wang Chong was in the center of this world. Let me think, what did I hear just now? Fate. Wang Chong closed his eyes and sat on the edge of his bed, trying his best to recall the voice he heard in the hall. His hands were placed on his knees and his palms subconsciously rubbed against each other. In his previous life, Wang Chong didn't feel nervous even when he was leading an army on the battlefield. But this time, Wang Chong felt slightly nervous. Right, Fate Struggler. It's Fate Struggler. When the words Fate Struggler flashed across Wang Chong's mind, it was as though he had found the key to a certain door and a change occurred in Wang Chong's mind. A large amount of information flowed into Wang Chong's mind and Wang Chong heard the mechanical and emotionless voice once again. But this time, the content that Wang Chong heard was much more than before. User has awakened. Successfully changed the fate of your family and obtained the recognition of your family members. You have obtained the title, Fate Struggler. Fate Struggler. In the spider web weaved by fate, everyone is but an insignificant ant. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. Title, Fate Struggler, Reward, 50 Destiny Energy. Along with this voice, all kinds of illusions flashed before his eyes. Everything that happened after Wang Chong's reincarnation, from him apologizing to his parents, to him wreaking havoc in the vast crane pavilion, to him persuading his father. All of these flashed before his eyes. Wang Chong felt as though he was a bystander, reassessing his actions over the past period of time. Seeing this scene, Wang Chong sucked in a breath of cold air. His guess wasn't wrong. Something really happened to him. This strange voice and the so-called destiny struggler was definitely not a normal phenomenon. It was no wonder why he felt that his body was much more agile after his reincarnation. It was no wonder why his cultivation of the dragon bone technique was much smoother. It was no wonder why his absorption of the body-tempering pill was much faster than usual. At this moment, Wang Chong completely understood. His senses weren't wrong. There really was some unknown mysterious power taking effect on his body. But it had been so long, why hadn't he felt anything? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. He thought back to the time in the hall when his uncle, who had never liked him, had acknowledged him. That was when this voice appeared. So, this mysterious power actually needs to be triggered by certain conditions? Wang Chong sat on the edge of the bed, motionless. What happened today was too much of a shock to him. Wang Chong had to think carefully about what had happened to him. The host has awakened. Is this referring to me? This power appeared on me, so I became its host. But what's with the destiny struggler? Is it because of this that I've changed the fate of myself and my family, and that's why I appeared? Wang Chong lowered his head as countless thoughts flashed through his mind. These 3 sentences left him with too little information. Wang Chong could only try his best to uncover the truth from these words. Furthermore, even though he didn't understand what was going on with this strange voice, Wang Chong had a feeling that it had something to do with his reincarnation. In his previous life, such a situation had never happened before. All of this happened after his reincarnation. So, all of this is because of that meteor? Inexplicably, Wang Chong thought of that meteor again. That was the last scene he saw before his death in his previous life. It was also a secret that he had never been able to unravel. Just as this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, his vision went black. Wang Chong suddenly found himself in front of an endless void. The darkness was boundless, and in the center of this darkness, a dot of light appeared. It quickly expanded 100 times, turning into a cluster of light the size of a mountain. It's that meteor! Wang Chong's heart tightened as he recognized it. This resplendent ball of light was none other than the resplendent star Wang Chong had seen before his death. At the same time, it was also the culprit that brought him to this world on a scorching summer day in another spacetime. Looking at this brilliant comet, Wang Chong had an indescribable feeling in his heart. After all this time, Wang Chong had never imagined that he would meet it again in this sort of situation and in this sort of situation. All of this really is related to it. Wang Chong muttered to himself. his mind was in a trance, and his heart was extremely complicated. This meteor could be said to be something that he hated the most. It was it that destroyed his first life and forcefully brought him to this world. But at the same time, it also gave him a new life, giving him a chance to change and make up for the mistakes he had made, as well as the regrets he had. From this point, Wang Chong was extremely grateful to it. In short, it was like a cloud of fog. It could be seen, but it could not be touched. At the same time, it emitted all kinds of mysterious powers. Moreover, even now, Wang Chong still didn't know what this shooting star was, why it had brought him here, or why it possessed such inconceivable power that it could change space-time and revive him from the dead. Just as these thoughts flashed through his mind, Wang Chong heard another voice in his mind: frowny face, stone of destiny. Like a rock falling into a lake, it set off thousands of ripples. Once again, the scene in front of Wang Chong changed. In the boundless darkness, the mountain-sized meteor suddenly shrank rapidly, becoming smaller and smaller. All of the light also converged inward from the outside. In the blink of an eye, the dazzling meteor disappeared from the void. In its place was a simple and unadorned fist-sized mysterious gem that emitted powerful space-time fluctuations. It quietly floated in front of Wang Chong. Without any reason, Wang Chong immediately knew that this gem was the Stone of Destiny. Destiny is not controlled by anyone. A string of information flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and right next to the Stone of Destiny he could vaguely make out a familiar figure. Wang Chong recognized it. It was himself. Only those who are favored by destiny can become the child of destiny. However, becoming the child of destiny is not necessarily something to be envied, because you will never know what kind of price you will have to pay. The mechanical, emotionless voice stopped abruptly at this point. Then the room became silent. There was not a single sound. Wang Chong sat in the room, his heart pounding. He could not calm down no matter what. That short piece of information gave him a huge impact. From that short message, Wang Chong felt a strong sense of danger. Child of destiny. So I am the child of destiny? Being chosen by the Stone of Destiny means becoming the child of destiny. But what's the price? Why did it say, you will never know what kind of price you will have to pay? At this moment, Wang Chong felt a strong sense of unease in his heart. The unknown was always the most unsettling. Wang Chong had always thought that his resurrection was a favor from the heavens. But now, Wang Chong suddenly had a very bad feeling. Perhaps, this Stone of Destiny was not as perfect as he thought. Sitting on the bed, Wang Chong thought about that sentence again and again. He thought about it carefully, hoping to find some clues and extract more information. But this time, Wang Chong was unable to obtain any more information. Right? Destiny energy? What's the use of destiny energy? Wang Chong suddenly said loudly. After a few times, Wang Chong gradually found the way to communicate with that strange voice, or rather, the mysterious Stone of Destiny. As long as he asked the right question, the mysterious Stone of Destiny would definitely respond. Buzz! As soon as Wang Chong said that, there was a new change in his mind. A new stream of information flowed into Wang Chong's mind. The mechanical, emotionless voice finally said something different. Frowny face, destiny is a boulder, and destiny's child is an ant standing in front of the boulder. Any attempt to go against nature and change the normal destiny will be hindered and punished by the world with all its might. And only by obtaining the destiny energy can one resist the world's punishment. This is the foundation of destiny's child's existence. Following this cold, mechanical voice, buzz, the void trembled, and the scene in front of Wang Chong changed. The room he was originally standing in suddenly disappeared, and Wang Chong's vision expanded infinitely in a short period of time. There were no jade buildings, no houses, no capital, no imperial palace, and even all the mountains and rivers had disappeared. In their place were countless densely packed webs and tiny white cocoon silk, whizzing from all directions. Like spindles, they tightly wrapped around Wang Chong. From these spindle-like cocoon silk, Wang Chong felt a strong sense of rejection and hostility, as if these things were alive. All the webs and silk kept shrinking, as if they wanted to shred Wang Chong into pieces. Buzz! Seeing this scene, Wang Chong's scalp went numb, and his expression changed. He had always thought that he was favored by the heavens, which allowed him to return to 15 years old. Wang Chong naturally accepted all this. But now, it seemed that was not the case at all. Although he did not hear the cold, mechanical voice's explanation, Wang Chong knew that the dense, spindle-like webs and white silk were the world energy that the Stone of Destiny had mentioned. Looking at the dense, omnipresent world energy, Wang Chong completely understood. His rebirth did not come without a price. Just like that voice said, all of this went against the laws of nature. The fate of a world had already been decided, and when someone tried to change it, it meant that they were going against the entire world. Chapter 43. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Wang Chong once again heard the mechanical, emotionless voice, "God helps those who help themselves. Only those who control their own destiny will be favored by destiny." In a normal world, once the host dies, the Stone of Destiny can only help the host gain a year of life. Only by gathering enough destiny energy can the host extend their lifespan and at the same time resist the world's restraint and complete their mission. Following this voice, light and shadow intertwined before Wang Chong suddenly saw his own soul. It was a fragmented soul, as if thousands of fragments were pieced together. And between these fragments, there was a strange energy. It was this energy that was like threads, piecing his soul together and showing signs of healing. So that's how it is. The sight of that shattered soul made Wang Chong's heart fill with bitterness. All of a sudden, he was sure that he had really died once. These fragmented soul fragments were the best proof. No wonder the voice said that he only had a year to live. Warning: the first world's restraint will come in the first month after the host awakens. Remaining days, 9 days. Warning: the world's restraint will severely harm the host's body and soul, and greatly reduce the host's lifespan until the host dies. And if the host successfully resists the world's restraint, the host's body will be strengthened every time he successfully resists it. At the same time, his lifespan will be slightly extended. Warning: the first time you resist the world's restraint, you will consume 20 destiny energy. Currently, the host has 50 destiny energy. A series of warnings rang in his mind, and following the mechanical, emotionless voice, a series of new information flowed into Wang Chong's mind. Looking at the information in his mind, Wang Chong sat on the edge of his bed and fell into deep thought. Reversing space-time did not seem as simple as he had imagined. Although the mysterious Stone of Destiny possessed powerful and unimaginable space-time abilities, it seemed that reversing space-time also consumed a large amount of its energy. And for the rest, he could only rely on himself. Moreover, wanting to change the fate of a world was far more difficult than he had imagined. To this world, he was a pure outsider, an enemy of the world. Therefore, other than facing the enemies of fate, he might also have to face the enemy world. It was either succeed or die trying. That was what all this information had been trying to tell him in another dimension. On this path, there was no turning back. This was the price the Stone of Destiny had mentioned. Fortunately, the Stone of Destiny also pointed out a direction. Every time he survived the world restriction, or rather, the punishment, his body would strengthen a little. Perhaps when he was strong enough, he would be able to completely ignore the shackles of the world. This was his only hope. Although I don't know what the world shackles will be like, if I only need 20 destiny energy to resist it, I'll be able to defeat it. Then I have enough here. I wonder, what can I do with the remaining 30 points of destiny energy? Buzz. As this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, the scene before him changed again. In the boundless darkness, the Stone of Destiny suddenly disappeared, and 5 orbs of light appeared in front of Wang Chong. Heart, body, chi, technique, power. As soon as he saw the 5 orbs of light, Wang Chong suddenly understood what they meant. The 5 great schools of martial arts: heart, chi, technique, and power. These 5 orbs of light represented the 5 main elements of martial arts. Heart represented conviction. Body represented body tempering technique. Qi represented vitality that existed everywhere in the world. Technique represented the moves and spells of an attack. Power represented luck, momentum, and overall momentum. On the path of martial arts, not only did one need a strong conviction, one also needed a strong body, boundless vitality, profound techniques, and the luck of heaven and earth. When the time comes, the world will lend its strength, but when the time comes, the hero will not be free. This was something that Wang Chong understood very well in his previous life. So the use of destiny energy is actually related to the 5 great schools of martial arts? These 5 balls of light represent 5 different types of rewards. Wang Chong suddenly understood. Among the 5 orbs of light, the 3 highest level Qi, technique, and power were all in a gray state. It was obvious that they were still in a sealed state. Only the 2 orbs of light that represented heart and body were still in a bright state. Conviction was useless to the current Wang Chong. Only the body-tempering technique was what Wang Chong really needed. With a thought, Wang Chong sent a portion of his consciousness into the 2nd orb of light. Wang. In the next moment, a bright light appeared in front of Wang Chong. Destiny exchange, root bone. Destiny exchange, blood change. Change the martial artist's talent, sealed state. Blood change? There's actually such a thing? Wang Chong looked at the 2nd line and was very surprised. However, with a tap of his right hand, he opened the root bone column without hesitation. Root bone, Panther bone level 1. Destiny energy, 25 points. This is it. Upon seeing this, Wang Chong chuckled. Even though he had chosen to cultivate the dragon bone art, he needed to reach the pinnacle of the dragon bone art in order to bring out its effects and convert it into dragon bones. Furthermore, before successfully cultivating the dragon bone art, his root bone was still 0. He hadn't even reached the lowest level, panther bone. However, if he could obtain the help of the destiny stone and possess the panther bone, even if it was just the most basic one Dan, it would be of great help to him. It would save him a lot of time in cultivating the dragon bone art. To the current him, this was undoubtedly the best and most helpful option. Wang. With a tap of his finger, Wang Chong chose to exchange it. In the next moment, a dot of light shot out. Walala, a warm energy gushed down layer by layer like a tidal wave, gushing into Wang Chong's body. Closing his eyes, Wang Chong allowed the hot spring-like energy to seep into his muscles, blood vessels, and bones. Kachacha, a series of crackling sounds echoed from the depths of his bones. It was as though boiling molten metal had been injected into Wang Chong's bones, and in a short period of time, they were swiftly strengthened. What immense energy! To think that it could alter a martial artist's bones and tendons despite the passage of time. Opening his arms wide, Wang Chong felt as though there was an inexhaustible amount of energy flowing through his body. Compared to before, his strength had clearly grown significantly. To think that the energy of destiny would allow him to reach the panther bone realm without the need to cultivate for a long period of time, this was inconceivable. The hot spring-like energy continued to flow into his body, and when the last strand of energy disappeared, Wang Chong realized that his cultivation realm had risen by a level, reaching tier 4.5. In terms of the toughness of his root bone, he was no different from those Origin Energy tier 9 and Panther Bone realm martial artists. Even though he hadn't reached Origin Energy tier 5 yet, in terms of pure strength, even Origin Energy tier 5 martial artists wouldn't be a match for him. I'm only left with 5 Destiny Energy points. I probably won't be able to exchange for anything else. After his cultivation realm rose by a level, Wang Chong was in a good mood. Since he couldn't do anything with the remaining 5 Destiny Energy, Wang Chong decided to leave them for the time being. As for the remaining 20 Destiny Energy, Wang Chong had to keep them to deal with the world punishment, which he had no idea what it was. Battle armor? Destiny struggler. After exchanging for the panther bone, Wang Chong suddenly noticed a change in the 2nd ball of light. A simple yet elegant crimson battle armor appeared in Wang Chong's vision. The moment he saw it, Wang Chong immediately knew its name. Destiny Struggler. This was a set of tidal armor. 80 Destiny Energy. This isn't something I can satisfy at the moment. Seeing the exorbitant amount of destiny energy required to exchange for this crimson battle armor, Wang Chong could only shake his head. He only had 5 destiny energy to spare at the moment, and he was still far from being able to exchange for this destiny struggler. After exiting from the body-tempering category, reward, Wang Chong couldn't help but turn his gaze to the first ball of light floating in the endless darkness beside the stone of destiny. Heart represented faith and faith. As the saying goes, attacking the heart is better than attacking the city. Heart couldn't strengthen a martial artist's physique, nor could it increase a martial artist's strength. However, it was the most important of the 5 great martial arts sects. Of the 5 great martial arts sects, the state of the heart was the most unique. It was in a half-sealed state. Wang Chong sent a portion of his consciousness into the ball of light. Then, within the half-sealed ball of light, Wang Chong saw a few unexpected words. Sense of mission. These 3 words were dark and gloomy, and other than that, there was no other information. I understand now. Looking at these 3 words, Wang Chong went silent for a long time, then exited his mind. After everything was over, Wang Chong sat on the edge of his bed, crossed his hands on his forehead, and calmly pondered. The appearance of the Stone of Destiny was something that couldn't be found in the historical records. There were too many things that he needed to think about. For example, what was the origin of the Stone of Destiny? What was the purpose of its existence? What benefits would it gain from helping me? Moreover, that mechanical, emotionless voice gave Wang Chong a very strange feeling. The way it presented itself was also very strange. It didn't seem like something that should exist in this world, but rather something from another space-time, something that originated from the world's artificial intelligence. Wang Chong could only guess that perhaps because his soul came from a different space-time, the Stone of Destiny chose to communicate with him in a way that he was more familiar with. But no matter what the reason was, there were a few things that Wang Chong could be sure of. First, any fate that went against the laws of nature would be restricted by the world. Therefore, this matter was very risky for him, but it also had benefits. His promotion to Panther Bone was enough to prove this. Second, in order to avoid the rejection and restriction from the world, he needed to obtain a large amount of destiny energy. And destiny energy could only be obtained by changing fate and saving the world. On the other hand, although the Stone of Destiny didn't mention it, Wang Chong could deduce that the greater the change he made to this world, the greater the rejection he would receive from this world in the future. In other words, he needed to obtain more destiny energy to survive in this world. To receive the crown, one must bear its weight. Whether my lifespan in this world is 1 year or 4 years, as long as I can fulfill my long-cherished wish and change the fate of this world, I don't care about anything else. Chapter 44. Speed is of utmost importance in war. It's better to be early than late. While Wang Chong was still conflicted over the Stone of Destiny in his room, he received a message from his cousin, Wang Zhuyan. In this aspect, with Big Uncle as her backing, she was much more astute than him. Wang Chong's guess was spot on. The Yao clan's old master Yao had really put down his pride and appeared at Wang Chong's grandfather's residence in the Four Quarters Embassy. And the time was tonight. The Yao and Wang clan had officially come to an agreement. After Wang Chong's reminder, Big Uncle had added cousin Wang Li's name into the list of representatives and requested for the Yao clan's cooperation to promote cousin Wang Li's official position. On this matter, old master Yao had no choice but to agree to it on the spot. After that, it was time for the political negotiations. This was a rare opportunity for the Yao clan to seek peace. Grandfather and Big Uncle naturally had to add on some political demands to this matter and scrape a layer of skin off the Yao clan. Cousin Wang Zhuyan was astonished by this matter. His words were filled with admiration for Wang Chong and disbelief at the entire matter. That old fellow sure reacted quickly. After sending away the servant sent by second sister, Wang Zhuyan, Wang Chong sighed. The Yao clan's old master Yao's visit came much earlier than he had expected. Just this political acumen and decisiveness was far above that of an ordinary person. The Yao clan's old master Yao had fought with his grandfather for so long, but he had never been willing to lower his head. This time, for the sake of his descendant, he didn't hesitate at all. This was also what made the Yao clan fearsome. As long as the Yao clan's old master was around, the Yao clan was invincible. No one would be able to destroy the Yao clan. However, this wasn't what Wang Chong was concerned about. With the matter by the border settled, Wang Chong was certain that after this performance, he had completely changed everyone's impression of him. Even now, Wang Chong could still remember the shock in his big aunt's eyes when she left, as well as the joy in his mother's eyes when she kept glancing at him. Even his father, Wang Yan, in his letter, revealed intense joy and disbelief. He had always had a deep prejudice against him, and the most difficult thing for Wang Chong to change was his impression of him. However, after what had happened to the king of Song and Yao Guangyi, Wang Chong believed that his father's opinion of him had completely changed. As for the family, Wang Chong glanced at the letter on the table. Cousin Wang Zhuyan's relentless questioning, as well as the incredulity in her words, were more than enough to explain the problem. Although it was hard to say if he could squeeze into the core of the family, there was no doubt that he had successfully attracted everyone's attention. Now there's only one thing left. Wang Chong smiled. As the saying goes, good things come in pairs. He had already received news from Wei Hao that the Wuxia steel weapons should be completed in a few days. As long as the other side was fine, he would be able to collect the money. What? With a flick of his robe, Wang Chong walked out of the room. The night was dark, and a bright moon hung high in the sky. Under the moonlight, the corridors of the Wang residence were dotted with lanterns. As Wang Chong ascended the stairs, he was greeted by countless gazes of respect and awe. Compared to before, all of the guards, servants, and maids looked at him in a completely different light. This series of events had not only changed the fate of the Wang clan, it had also changed Wang Chong's standing in the residence. It's time to cultivate. Wang Chong walked to a familiar corner, opened the stance, and began practicing the dragon bone art. Hard work could make up for one's lack of talent. Literary work couldn't be stopped, and martial arts couldn't be abandoned either. In this period of time, he felt that his strength had increased once more. The matter by the border continued to ferment in the capital. Through the rumors of the Yao clan's old master Yao paying a visit to Duke Jiao in the Four Quarters Embassy's peaceful harmony garden, the news of the Yao and Wang clan shaking hands had spread like wildfire in the capital. The Yao and Wang clan had been at odds for many years, but this was the first time that the Wang clan had surpassed the Yao clan. Yao Guangyi's failure by the border was the turning point of this matter, and it was the topic of discussion in the streets and alleys. Yao Guangyi's foresight was flawless, but this time, he was tossed aside like a monkey. Many people said that the Wang clan's Duke Jiao had invited a mysterious expert who was on par with Yao Guangyi to guide him. Now, in private, everyone was guessing who this powerful, mysterious master was. Putting aside the hustle and bustle outside, Wang Chong, as the expert, whom many nobles and prestigious clans talked about on the streets, lived a peaceful life, secluded from the world, happily carrying out his plan to strike it rich. And this plan was already nearing its end. How Wang Chong looked. The Wuxia steel weapon you spoke of has finally been forged. In a cave in the western suburbs of the capital, Wei Hao was holding a black sword that was about 3 feet long. He was laughing excitedly. This was the standard sword of the Central Plains. It had 2 blades, a straight blade, and the width of the blade was around 2 fingers wide. The black blade gave off a thick and sturdy feeling. Right, Wang Chong, why did you add a line on both sides of the blade? The swords of our Central Plains don't have such lines, right? Wei Hao suddenly scratched his head as he looked at the lines on both sides of the blade with a perplexed expression. This is called a blood groove, and it is specially designed for killing. When it stabs into a person's body, blood would spurt out from the blood groove. In a short period of time, the other party would lose a huge amount of blood. Wang Chong smiled. Ah! Wei Hao was shocked, and he nearly dropped the sword in his hand. Blood groove? Killing? Wang Chong, this sword sure is ferocious. Wang Chong smiled without saying a word. Wuxia steel weapons, including the Damascus scimitar, were originally meant for killing. In fact, All swords and sabers were meant for killing. They were designed for this purpose. Righteousness doesn't wield wealth, and compassion doesn't command troops. If one was timid, it was best to stay away from such a ferocious weapon. Give it to me. Wang Chong took the Wuxia steel sword from Wei Hao and weighed it in his hand. Compared to ordinary swords and sabers, the Wuxia steel sword was much heavier, weighing around 20 to 30 jin. If one didn't possess extraordinary strength, it would be difficult to wield a weapon weighing 20 to 30 jin for a long period of time. The first Wuxia steel weapon has finally been forged. Wang Chong thought to himself. With a casual wave of his hand, a sword slash flashed in the air, and a rock on the cliff in his right hand cracked open, causing rubble to fall down. Wow, how sharp! This sword of yours isn't ordinary. Wei Hao's head shrank back in shock. He had never tried the newly forged Wuxia steel sword before, so he didn't expect it to be so sharp. He knew the hardness of the rocks here. Back then, the Wei clan chose this place because the rocks here were dense and sturdy, making it suitable to be used as a forge. Even though the space here wasn't big, it took them almost half a year to excavate it. The masters in the residence had tried using extremely sharp swords and sabers, but they were only able to cut off a tiny bit of rubble. Yet, Wang Chong's sword was able to easily cut through the protruding rocks with just a single slash. The sword is still incomplete now. After I add inscriptions and quench it, it won't be as sharp as this. Wang Chong said calmly. Wei Hao was also speechless. He didn't understand a single one of the names that Wang Chong spoke of. Not to mention him, even his master didn't know anything about cold forging or anything like that. He really had no idea where Wang Chong learned so many things from. To tell the truth, Wang Chong, the Sindhi are asking for a huge sum. Just based on these swords, can you sell them for such a high price? You spent so much effort on it, I'm worried that it'll all go to waste. Wei Hao said worriedly. Other than him, no one else knew that Wang Chong owed a huge debt of 90,000 gold taels. He had been thinking about this matter and had been secretly worried about it. Don't worry. You'll understand when the time comes. Wang Chong indifferently said, unconcerned. Holding the Wuxia steel sword in his hands, Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. He suddenly thought of his cousin, Wang Zhuyan. The matter of the Wuxia steel weapons was already related to Wei Hao and the blacksmiths of the Duke of Wei residence. Now, it was his cousin Wang Zhuyan's turn. Brat, what are you doing by fiddling with these things? In the west of the capital, in the Shi Pavilion, a red carpet was laid on the floor and the bed was made of gold and jade. Wang Chong's cousin, Wang Zhuyan, was currently stretching her body contentedly. With one hand, she toyed with the Wuxia steel weapons made by Wang Chong. Her 5 fingers moved swiftly while her other hand picked up a purplish-red grape. With an elegant posture, she placed it into her mouth and slowly chewed on it. Even Wang Chong had to admit that this cousin of his did have the capability to be proud. In terms of martial prowess, she was able to challenge most of the young geniuses and geniuses of the prestigious clans in the capital. In terms of demeanor, she was refined and elegant. Even the princesses of the royal palace were impressed by her. There was no place in the capital that she couldn't do well. Second sister, you promised me a while ago. You can't have forgotten about it, right? Wang Chong lowered his waist and chuckled. Even though he had gained some face before Big Uncle, Big Aunt, and Uncle, Wang Chong didn't dare to rub his nose against this cousin of his. This was the Buddha, and he was the monkey in his palm. Before he grew up, it was best for him to tuck his tail between his legs and behave himself. Based on your previous performance, I can help you with this matter. However, other than this, is there anything else you have forgotten to tell me? As Wang Zhuyan spoke, she turned around and stared deeply into Wang Chong's eyes. Anything else? Wang Chong was perplexed, unable to react in time. What is it? You still want to act before me? Wang Zhuyan harumphed coldly in displeasure. Do you need me to remind you? What's going on with the 8 gods pavilion? Shua! As though a bolt of lightning had struck his head, in that instant, cold sweat trickled down Wang Chong's back. The heck? How did she know everything? Could it be that she stared at him 24 hours a day? He thought that he had managed to deceive her regarding the matter in the 8 Gods Pavilion. To think that she knew about it from the start, just that she feigned ignorance. Chapter 45. Look at that guilty look of yours. Wang Zhuyan harumphed. Her expression didn't change, but the edges of her lips curled up slightly, revealing a hint of glee. If not for the fact that I'm on good terms with Duke of Zhao's Princess Xianxia, you wouldn't think that you could hide this matter from me, right? Second sister, how would I dare to? Wang Chong hurriedly admitted defeat. Even if you give me 10 guts, I wouldn't lie to you. Only the heavens knew why his cousin was so resourceful. There was nothing that could hide from her. Yet, she was older than him, and he had to address her as second sister. Furthermore, he wasn't a match for her. A wise man doesn't fight when the odds are against him, so he quickly admitted his mistake. It's good that you know. Seeing the frightened expression on Wang Chong's face, Wang Zhuyan couldn't help but chuckle. This lad, she had to teach him a lesson from time to time lest he gets carried away. Initially, I wanted to tell your mother about this matter. However, on account of your previous performance, I'll let this matter go. However, you don't lack food or clothes at home, so why did you borrow so much money? 200 gold taels isn't a small sum, even I don't have that much money. 200 gold taels? Wang Chong was taken aback. He lifted his head abruptly and was taken aback. Isn't it 1700 gold taels? Does cousin not know about it? Wang Chong immediately felt energized. Even though he didn't know what was going on, it was clear that his cousin didn't know much about this matter. Duke of Zhao? That means Zhao Lin? There doesn't seem to be a need for him to help me keep it a secret, right? Why did he say that it was 200 gold taels? Could it be Subai? Wang Chong finally understood the situation. It had been a long time since he borrowed money from the 8 Gods Pavilion, but there wasn't much news about it. It was highly likely that she had accidentally uncovered the matter regarding his cousin. Wang Chong had a feeling that Su Bai and the others were intentionally hiding the matter for him. However, it probably wasn't because they were thinking of him. Wang Chong guessed that they were trying to make use of this matter to deal with him in the future. After all, the longer this matter dragged on, the more interest he would owe them. This brat is really up to no good. Wang Chong thought to himself. If he was really a hedonistic son of a rich family, he might really fall into his trap. However, Su Bai's matter could be put aside for now. To Wang Chong, the most important matter at hand was to appease this resourceful cousin of his. Hee, cousin, I'm just borrowing money to buy shares and earn a little profit from doing business with others. If you don't like it, I'll return the 200 taels of gold to them. With a smile on his face, Wang Chong walked up and massaged his cousin Wang Zhuyan's arm. Brat, hurry up and return it. Is it that easy to borrow money from the Zhao public house? Wang Zhuyan slapped away Wang Chong's palm and chided him jokingly. How could Wang Chong dare to refute? By the way, second sister, I should have prepared a small gift for you. Wang Chong hurriedly tried to curry favor. This second sister of his was simply too resourceful. It felt as though there was nothing that could be hidden from her, causing him to feel cold sweat running down his back. He had to make use of this opportunity to bribe her. Otherwise, who knew what kind of trouble she would cause in the future? Wang Zhuyan sat up from her bed and her eyes lit up. Stretching out her right hand, she asked, "What is it? Give it to me." How could Wang Chong dare to keep her in suspense? He hurriedly took out a small black object which he had prepared beforehand from his sleeves. What is this? Wang Zhuyan glanced at the unassuming object in Wang Chong's hands and astonishment filled her face. This is called an eyelash curler. Don't underestimate it just because it's rough and unassuming. With just a light pinch, it would be able to curl the eyelashes of noble ladies and young ladies. Wang Chong chuckled. This cousin of his was different from others. She didn't like gold or silver and only liked those weird items used by girls. For example, the nail file previously and the eyelash curler this time. Using such items to curry favor with her was the best way to do so. This was something that Wang Chong had comprehended during his wanton and unrestrained years, when he battled wits and courage with his cousin, Wang Zhuyan. As long as he took out a small object that didn't exist in this world, second sister would be overjoyed. With the treasure he presented, cousin Wang Zhuyan would be able to flaunt it in front of her close friends for a long period of time. As long as she was happy, she wouldn't find trouble with him. Thus, Wang Chong would be happy as well. In fact, he might even help to cover up the news. As expected, second sister took Wang Chong's eyelash curler and tried to pinch it on her eyelashes in front of the copper mirror. As expected, she was overjoyed. Little brat, at least you're considerate. Leave the item here, leave it to second sister. You can come and collect it a few days later. Wang Zhuyan smiled widely. She had indeed forgotten about that matter. She waved her hands furiously, chasing him away. Right, there's still half a month before grandfather's birthday. Don't blame second sister for not reminding you, this is a huge matter. We only get to meet grandfather once a year, so make sure to perform well and don't say anything wrong. In the end, Wang Zhuyan called out to Wang Chong and reminded him with a serious expression. I understand. Wang Chong made a funny face. Leaving behind the Wuxia steel sword, he turned around and left. Cousin Wang Zhuyan's progress was much faster than Wang Chong had expected. Roughly 3 days later, Wang Chong received 4 Wuxia steel swords with strength inscriptions. Heavy! Wang Chong held one of the swords in his hands and he could clearly feel the weight of the swords. Upon closer inspection, one could see that on the 3-foot-long sword, strands of strange veined patterns were wrapped around the sword like vines. Beneath the pitch-black body of the sword, there was a faint glow. Compared to 3 days ago, the Wuxia steel swords didn't seem to have changed much. However, Wang Chong could clearly feel that the Wuxia steel swords were different from before. Wang Chong stretched his right hand out and grabbed the hilt of the sword. In an instant, a powerful surge of energy gushed into his body. Kaka sounds echoed from within Wang Chong's body, and a feeling as though water had melted into his body. Wang Chong felt as though the sword had become a part of his body. What incredible strength! In just a few short breaths, Wang Chong could clearly feel his aura rising by a notch. From Origin Energy Tier 4, he reached Origin Energy Tier 5. Furthermore, all of this happened in an instant. These weaponsmiths sure are fearsome. This kind of strength left Wang Chong in awe. At the same time, he felt deep respect for them. It was rumored that those who could become weaponsmiths were all formidable experts. Even though Yao Feng was one of the 8 talents of the capital, he was still a far cry from matching up to these weaponsmiths. This was only possible because her cousin was very resourceful and knew many nobles, young ladies of aristocratic families, and princesses in the palace. That was why she was able to accomplish this task. Wang Chong, as per your request, I have cleared out the cavern. You can use everything here without any worries. Also, there are guards standing guard at the entrance. I have already passed down an order that no one is to approach while you are forging the swords. A voice sounded from behind. Wei Hao walked over casually and gestured for Wang Chong to be at ease. Thank you. Wang Chong nodded his head and recovered from his daze. Now that the inscriptions on the swords were done, all that was left was the final step, quenching. Help me keep an eye on it. By sunrise tomorrow, everything will be done. Wang Chong gestured to Wei Hao and his little sister. Then, he parted the black curtain at the entrance and walked in alone. The massive cavern was empty. There wasn't a single person in sight. Wei Hao had already cleared out the cavern for Wang Chong so that Wang Chong could focus on his work. The final step for any weapon was quenching. However, Wang Chong didn't want anyone to be present when it came to quenching the Wuxia steel. The quenching of this steel was different from any other steel. This would be an important bargaining chip for Wang Chong to use against the Abbasid Caliphate for the Hyderabad ores in the future. All the flames in the cavern were extinguished. This was at Wang Chong's request. However, there was a pile of pine branches on the ground, each of them around 3 chi tall. Wang Chong wasn't in a hurry to quench the swords. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the cold ground and waited patiently. There were still a few hours before sunrise. As long as there was a moment before sunrise, when light and darkness alternated, that was the best time to temper the wood steel. Different from the process of smelting and cold forging, The quenching process was the shortest and most important. Little sister, what do you think your brother is doing in there? It's just quenching. Is there a need to make it so complicated? Even we aren't allowed in. I asked the swordsmiths today, and they said that this step is simple. All he has to do is to plunge it into the cold water after it's heated up. Why is your brother making it so complicated? A rustling voice came from outside. Wang Chong could tell that it was Wei Hao's voice. Hearing this voice, Wang Chong couldn't help but chuckle. Wei Hao's doubts represented the thoughts of most swordsmiths in this era. In this era, people's understanding of quenching was still at the stage of, if the temperature of the weapon was lowered in a short period of time, the quality of the sword would be raised to a certain extent. In fact, most swordsmiths would plunge the sword into the cold water after they were done forging. Those who didn't take it seriously would skip it, thinking that as long as the sword wasn't too hot, it would cool down on its own. There were very few people who treated quenching as an important step as Wang Chong. It will take at least 6 to 7 years for people in this era to understand the true use of quenching. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind as he shook his head. Wang Chong possessed knowledge that was far ahead of this era when it came to the forging of swords and sabers. Many people knew that swords and sabers needed to be quenched. However, very few people knew that quenching was the most important step in the forging of swords and sabers. It was far more important than any other step. Quenching could greatly increase the steel's rigidity, hardness, wear resistance, fatigue strength, toughness, and corrosion resistance. This was the fastest and biggest step in the forging of weapons. Different weapons had different methods of quenching. The top-notch weapons in the world all had their own unique methods of quenching. It was a pity that due to their misunderstanding, most swordsmiths' understanding of quenching remained at the lowest level of water quenching. Unbeknownst to them, by plunging a sword into cold water, it would cause great damage to the steel and charcoal contained in the sword. Even though the surface of the sword was perfect and the quality had been raised, the internal structure of the sword was already filled with countless cracks. Such swords couldn't be used for long. Some of the swords even broke on the spot. That was the reason why there were so many cracked, broken, and defective weapons during the quenching process. But it was a pity that most swordsmiths didn't pay any heed to it. They thought that there was a problem with the steel or their forging method. This wasn't just the case in the East. Even in the West, where the weapon trade was booming, the Arab swordsmiths were the same. Chapter 46. Wuxia steel was different from other kinds of steel. It could not be quenched with water. That way, this precious steel would be completely destroyed. The Hyderabad ore project was of great importance. Wang Chong would not let anyone else handle it. Time passed slowly, and the discussions outside the cave gradually quieted down. Wang Chong sat alone in the cave. He was extremely calm. It was unthinkable for him to not return at night in the past. However, ever since the incident at the border, the entire Wang clan looked at Wang Chong in a different light. Even Wang Chong's mother was not as strict with him as before. It's about time. Suddenly, Wang Chong felt something. He opened his eyes and a dazzling light shot out. He could feel that it was almost sunrise. Standing up, Wang Chong quickly walked over and gathered the pine branches that Wei Hao had gathered into a circle. With the sound of flint, the cave was quickly lit up with a raging fire. When the pine branches were burnt to a bright red charcoal and piled up on the ground, Wang Chong took out the black semi-finished Wuxia steel sword. He took a pair of pliers from the stove and used them to clamp the sword hilt. Then he buried it in the bright red charcoal. After about the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the Wuxia steel sword that was buried in the charcoal gradually turned red and started to emit flames. Wang Chong stared at the emitted flames. His expression was tense and his eyes were extremely focused. During the quenching process of Wuxia steel, the flames emitted by the sword were an important part of it. The reason why Wang Chong chose to do it at sunrise was that the color of the flames emitted by the Wuxia steel sword was the basis for judging the quality of the quenching. Different colors actually represented different temperatures of the weapon. If it was too bright or too dark, it would affect the color of the flames emitted by the Wuxia steel sword, which would affect the effect of the quenching. the effect of quenching at different temperatures would be completely different. Just a difference of 1 degree Celsius could forge a weapon with completely different properties. However, the temperature of the flame could not be measured, so the color of the flame became an important basis for judgment. Almost there. In the charcoal, the Wuxia steel sword began to emit a bright red color like a strawberry. Wang Chang's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he picked up the Wuxia steel sword, turned around quickly and dipped it into the iron trough filled with yellowish-brown oil. This was something that Wang Chong had already prepared. When the red Wuxia steel was immersed in the ice-cold oil, from extreme heat to extreme cold, the huge change in temperature caused the surface of the sword to sizzle with thick black smoke. Whether we can get the real Wuxia steel depends on this step. Wang Chong was extremely nervous as he nailed the iron trough. The Hyderabad or plan, from negotiations to casting, to inscription, to quenching, had now reached the final step. Even though he spoke confidently, Wang Chong was actually feeling uneasy and uncertain. The oil in the iron trough wasn't ordinary water used for quenching. Instead, it was a mixture of sesame oil, sheep fat, butter, asphalt brought over by the merchants of the western regions, and other liquids. This was the crux of a Wuxia steel weapon. In his previous life, the Central Plains did obtain some wood steel, but the reason why the weapons forged from them were so inferior to those forged from Damascus and the Abbasid Caliphate was not just in terms of sharpness, but also in terms of appearance. It was because they had not grasped the quenching method. In fact, there were even some who suspected that the wood steel weapons of the Central Plains weren't forged from Hyderabad ores at all. Instead, they were just imitations under the guise of wood steel. In truth, it wasn't that Sindh didn't provide the Central Plains with the real Wuxia steel, but that the Central Plains didn't have a grasp of the Hyderabad quenching method. Unable to wash out the natural patterns on the surface of the Wuxia steel, the legend of the sawtooth on the edge of the blade was inconceivable. This kind of Wuxia steel was only slightly sharper than a top-notch saber or sword. It couldn't be considered as one of the 3 great weapons. In his previous life, the reason why the Abbasid Caliphate controlled the entire supply of Wuxia steel in Sindh was because of the Hyderabad quenching method. However, in this life, Wang Chong wouldn't allow them to succeed. When the black smoke dissipated, the Wuxia steel sword in the iron trough had cooled down completely. Wang Chong used a pair of pliers to grab the Wuxia steel and pulled it out. Voila, water splashed everywhere. The instant the Wuxia steel was pulled out of the water, a dazzling silver radiance burst forth from the oil trough, reminiscent of a soaring serpent or the illumination of a silver moon. The cold radiance seemed to have coated the entire cavern in a layer of silver. Success! Looking at the resplendent silver sword before him, Wang Chong felt exceptionally agitated. The flowing patterns on the blade were exceptionally beautiful. At a glance, even the tip of the blade had a deep sawtooth pattern. It felt as though it was a gigantic shark in the deep sea, cold and murderous, yet elegant at the same time. The world's first true Wuxia steel weapon had finally been born in the Central Plains. Wang Chong had personally forged the first king of cold weapons. In that instant, Wang Chong felt incomparably agitated. While the sound of curtains being lifted echoed from behind. Hearing the commotion in the cavern, Wei Hao rushed in with the Wang family's little sister. "SSSS, what kind of weapon is this?" Wei Hao took a few steps forward. Looking at the resplendent weapon in Wang Chong's hands, he took in a deep breath. Wei Hao had never seen such a weapon before. The body of the sword was as shiny as mercury, and there were mysterious natural patterns on it. However, these patterns didn't affect the brilliance of the sword at all. What was most attractive about it was its blade. It was so sharp that it seemed as though it could cut through one's gaze. Wei Hao only took a single glance before he found himself unable to shift his gaze away. What a beautiful and fearsome weapon! Wei Hao muttered to himself. Coming from a noble clan, he had seen many things since young. Even so, he had never seen such a cold and elegant weapon before. It seemed as though it was born for slaughter. It was frightening to the extreme, yet luxurious and beautiful at the same time. With just a single glance, Wei Hao felt as though he had fallen into a nightmare. It's really beautiful. A tender voice sounded from the side. Wei Hao wasn't the only one whose attention was captivated. The Wang family's little sister stood by the side with her head tilted upward, as though she had lost her soul. Suddenly, the light dimmed. Wang Chong had sheathed the freshly forged Wuxia steel sword into its wooden sheath. Then, he tore a piece of black cloth and wrapped the Wuxia steel sword in layers. Wei Hao catch. Wang Chong casually tossed the Wuxia steel sword over. Wei Hao subconsciously caught it and hugged it in his arms. Looking at the body of the sword covered by the black cloth and sheath, he felt a sense of loss. Wang Chong, what kind of weapon is this? Wei Hao asked once more. This is the Wuxia steel sword that I told you about. Wang Chong replied calmly. He wasn't surprised by Wei Hao's reaction. In fact, he had only seen the body of the sword. He hadn't seen the fearsome might of the Wuxia steel sword yet. When he saw the fearsome might of the Wuxia steel sword on the battlefield, his reaction would be different. Back then, when the Wuxia steel weapon was made into the army's equipment, the first time it appeared on the battlefield, it wasn't just one or two groups of people who were shocked. Back then, when he mentioned the Hyderabad Ores project to Wei Hao's reaction was astonished and he thought that Wang Chong had gone mad. These ores weren't worth that much money. But now, Wei Hao's thoughts should have loosened. Wei Hao, this is the first sword that I have forged. Just take a look at it. Don't let anyone else see it. The first step of the plan has been completed. Based on what I told you before, I will leave the rest to you. Wang Chong said. Wei Hao regained his senses and nodded his head. Parting the curtain, Wang Chong walked out with widened strides. The first Wuxia steel weapon had been forged, but this was just the beginning. More than half a month had passed. If he couldn't gather 90,000 gold taels by the end of the month, Wang Chong's efforts would have been in vain. It was written in black and white on the records of the Court of Judicial Review. Even though it was used by Wang Chong to restrict the 2 Sindhi Buddhist monks, it was still not enough. But now, it had become Wang Chong's Achilles heel. Those 2 Sindhi Buddhist monks should be anxious by now. Wang Chong smiled and walked out. What Wang Chong didn't know was that in the white agate jewelry shop, the 2 Sindhi Buddhist monks were far more anxious than he had imagined. Amit Ba. In the room, Ablanadin clasped his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. He appeared calm on the surface, but in reality his eyebrows were twitching and he was on edge. Arloja, do you think that the young master of the Central Plains will go back on his words? Ablanadin persisted for a long time before he finally couldn't help but ask. It has already been so long, why hasn't there been any movement from his side? 20-some days had passed, and the 2 of them had waited for so long. Logically speaking, they shouldn't care about the last few days. But for some reason, the 2 of them felt exceptionally uneasy. Time waited for no man. The famine in Sindhu was only worsening, and many people had already starved to death. Just a few days ago, the 2 of them had received a letter from the high priest, urging them to return to Sindh. And this was already the 7th letter they had received this month. Give him another 3 days. If there is still no movement, we can only return to Sindhu and do as the high priest said and sell all of the Hyderabad ores to the Arabs. Arloja sighed. Ever since the contract was formed, the 2 of them had been paying close attention to Wang Chong's movements every day. However, Wang Chong's side seemed to have sunk into the ocean, not a single movement coming from him. The 2 of them had gone to the streets to investigate, but there was no news of Hyderabad ores or weapons. At the start, the 2 of them had been brimming with confidence in Wang Chong, but now, the 2 of them were growing more and more uneasy. Although Arloja had said that he would give Wang Chong a few more days, in truth, even he had lost all hope. I didn't think that we would still fail. Arloja sighed, returning to his dejected state. Selling the Hyderabad ores in the Central Plains was far more difficult than they had imagined. In addition, isn't there a great clan from the Central Plains? Why don't we try them? Blanadin mentioned the Zhang clan. He had a deep impression of the people who had paid a visit that day. No. Arloja shook his head. That noble might be decent, but they can't afford the price we are asking for. The swords of the Central Plains are too cheap. They aren't suitable partners. The kind of long-term customer that the high priest wants us to find doesn't exist in the Central Plains. Ablanadin fell silent. The two of them had clearly come to the same conclusion. Their initial goal in leaving Sindhu was to find a large number of large buyers and gather rations. In addition, they could avoid monopolizing the market. If they were to only sell to the Abbasid Caliphate, their Hyderabad ores wouldn't be able to fetch a high price. It wouldn't do to only sell to a single person. It was precisely because the high priest was unwilling to see such a situation that he sent them and others to various parts of the world. But from the looks of it now, the Abbasid Caliphate was the most suitable partner. Even though they couldn't fetch a high price, they were loyal and reliable. And the Central Plains was simply too far away. Chapter 47. It's been more than 20 days, and there's still no movement from that kid. In the garden of the Zhang clan, Zhang Jian and Zhang Tsong were seated around a millstone-sized stone table, sipping on tea. The two of them squinted their eyes and carefully tasted it. They looked very proud. How could it be that easy? 90,000 gold taels. That's not a small amount of money. Do you really think it's like eating a meal? Zhang Tsong raised his head and held the teacup in his hand. Besides, under the influence of Duke Jiao's incorruptibility, how could the Wang clan have so much money? Our Zhang clan has hundreds of years of heritage. Even though our family assets are far more than 90,000 gold taels, it is impossible to gather such a sum within a month, let alone them. This is easier said than done. They had been keeping an eye on the Supreme Court. The business in Hyderabad had yet to be completed. In their opinion, Wang Chang's business deal was most likely going to fail. What a pity, that kid is too arrogant. If he had considered it more when we visited him, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Now, not only can we not do business, I'm afraid we'll have to pay a hefty penalty. Zhang Jian raised his head slightly, holding a teacup in one hand and stroking his thick beard with the other. He looked satisfied. Back then, when they went to the white agate jewelry shop and learned that all of the ores in Hyderabad had been bought in advance, and it was the Wang clan, the two of them panicked. But now, the two of them were completely relaxed. In the Central Plains, the name of Duke Jiao resounded like thunder. If the Wang clan wanted to buy it, there was nothing they could do. However, the condition of 90,000 gold taels was a roadblock. No matter how influential the Wang clan was, if they couldn't gather 90,000 gold taels, it would all be for naught. In the end, the Hyderabad ores would have to go to the Zhang family. Now, they were only delaying them for a little bit of time. I really can't figure it out. Duke Jiao's lineage is either devoted to the royal court or the military, but I've never heard of them being interested in iron ores. When I heard that the Hyderabad ore was bought by the Wang family, I thought it was a joke. Why would they want the Sindhi ore? Zhang Jian suddenly asked doubtfully. Duke Jiao is a person of virtue and prestige. In my opinion, there's an 80 to 90% chance that he doesn't know about this matter. I'm afraid that it was done by his descendants. If something really happens, our Zhang clan will have to lend a hand. We can't allow Duke Jiao's reputation to be tarnished. Zhang Tsong replied seriously. Yes, this is actually the patriarch's intention. Zhang Jian nodded. Duke Jiao was a minister of the country. He had rendered meritorious service to the country and the world. If it wasn't for him, the world would have fallen apart long ago. This was also the reason why Duke Jiao was so respected. Just as the two of them were talking, a young man from the Zhang clan hurriedly walked in. He walked over to Zhang Jian's side, bowed, and whispered into his ear. What? Someone is selling swords at the Blue Bottle Pavilion? Zhang Jian was surprised. Isn't it normal for people to sell their swords? Zhang Tsong sipped on his tea nonchalantly. The capital was rich and populous, so there was nothing strange about selling swords. 600 taels for one. Gold. It hangs on the eaves of the Blue Bottle Pavilion, and no one is allowed to look at it. What? Zhang Tsong spurted a mouthful of tea and nearly choked on it. It wasn't strange for someone to sell swords. After all, there were plenty of steel swords and steel swords. However, a sword for 600 gold taels was a completely different matter. There were only a handful of powers in the world that could reach such a level, and the Zhang clan was one of them. Which clan crossed the line and came to the capital? Don't they know that this is our territory? What did the Huang clan, Cheng clan, Li clan, and Lu clan say about it? Zhang Tsong asked. He knew that if it was the Huang, Cheng, and Li clan in the capital, there was no need for them to report it. The men they sent have already rushed to the Blue Bottle Pavilion. They aren't aware of this matter either. In fact, they even sent someone to question us. Zhang Jian said. Zhang Tsong furrowed his brows. There were rules in the field of swordsmithing. Every world had its own territory and scope of operations. This wasn't a convention, but something that had formed naturally over the centuries. In the capital, it was basically the territory of the Zhang, Li, Huang, and Lu clan. It wasn't that they wouldn't allow others to sell their swords here. However, if the powers outside the capital were to come here to sell their swords, they should at least inform the Blue Bottle Pavilion beforehand, right? It wasn't that they were domineering, unreasonable, or ostracizing outsiders. Furthermore, this was the rule of the field of swordsmithing. If it were them, as long as they were doing the business of selling or buying swords, they would have to inform the branch in advance. This was a rule that everyone had to abide by. This clan didn't seem to follow the rules at all. Let's go and take a look. Zhang Tsong flung his sleeves and stood up. At the same time, Zhang Jian also stood up and placed down the teacup in his hands. The Blue Bottle Pavilion was a luxurious building with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters. Lifting one's head, it resembled a huge phoenix that was about to soar into the sky. Just like the vast Crane Pavilion, this was a top-notch place to eat and drink tea. However, due to the large number of customers, there were far more people who came here to drink tea and eat snacks than to eat. However, there was something different about the Blue Bottle Pavilion today. Diagonally opposite the entrance of the Blue Bottle Pavilion, there was a metal mountain made of metal ingots. It was 2 meters tall and 1 meter wide. Above the metal mountain was a 3-chi-long sword wrapped in layers of black cloth. It was hung high on the roof. Beside the sword, there was a wooden plaque with a simple line of words on it, 600 gold taels. This metal mountain, sword, and wooden plaque attracted the attention of many. Everyone surrounded it, and indistinctly, one could hear disdainful voices pointing at it, not allowed to see or touch. What kind of sword is this? 600 taels, and it's gold. Is he crazy for money? Why don't you eat me up instead? What is the Blue Bottle Pavilion doing? It's such a good place to eat and drink, and yet, they hung a sword on it. How are they going to continue doing business? On the second floor of the Blue Bottle Pavilion, Wei Hao looked down at the crowd outside. Hearing the disdainful voices, he felt uneasy. He was the young master of the Blue Bottle Pavilion, and he was the one who ordered Wang Chang's sword to be hung up. The disdainful laughter of the crowd outside was equivalent to mocking him. Wang Chong, is this really fine? Wei Hao was perturbed. The Blue Bottle Pavilion is a place where we can drink and rest. Why don't we find a proper sword shop or workshop? There's no need for that, we'll do it here. Wang Chong waved his hands and said resolutely. His eyes were calm and resolute, and there wasn't the slightest hint of wavering. At times, Wei Hao really admired him. It was as though he would never be swayed by external forces. However, is this really fine? I feel a little weird for these people who are here to drink tea to buy a sword. Furthermore, do you think that we can gather 90,000 gold taels for a sword with 600 gold taels? Different from Wang Chong, Wei Hao didn't have much confidence in himself. The place that Wang Chong chose was very remote, and it wasn't a proper place to sell swords. Furthermore, Wei Hao didn't know if 600 gold taels for a sword was expensive or cheap. All in all, the plan to gather 90,000 gold taels shouldn't have existed from the start. Don't worry, I'll definitely be able to gather it. As Wang Chong sipped on his food, he glanced over the railing at the crowd on the street below, his expression calm and unhurried. From the very start, it wasn't an easy task to complete a transaction of 90,000 gold taels. Under normal circumstances, a new famous sword would only be worth 600 to 700 gold taels, and even the best ones wouldn't exceed 1,000 gold taels. If one didn't have any requirements for a sword, An ordinary copper sword would only be worth around 10 to dozens of gold taels each. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to sell a Wuxia steel weapon for a high price. Furthermore, it would take at least 6 to 7 years for the market of Wuxia steel to pick up. Thus, from the very start, Wang Chong had made up his mind that he couldn't use ordinary methods. He had to take an unconventional path. And the Blue Bottle Pavilion was Wang Chong's plan. This place might not be a good location to sell swords, but Wang Chong knew that it had an advantage that no other sword dealer could match up to. Imperial Army. Diagonally opposite the Blue Bottle Pavilion, roughly 100 zhang away, was the main gate of the royal palace. A large group of Imperial Army members was stationed there. And the Blue Bottle Pavilion was the place that all of the Imperial Army members, commanders had to pass by in order to enter the royal palace. The reason why the Blue Bottle Pavilion was made into a place where one could enjoy tea and wine, unlike the vast Crane Pavilion where one could treat guests to a meal, was because the Imperial Army members of the royal palace would frequent this place to relax and amuse themselves. Alcohol was forbidden in the royal palace, and if the Imperial Army members wanted to drink, they could only come to the Blue Bottle Pavilion during the intervals when they were changing shifts. They were generous. Thus, the business of the Blue Bottle Pavilion had always been good. Of course, this wasn't the main focus of Wang Chong's attention. With the memories of his previous life, no one was clearer than Wang Chong that in the entire Tang dynasty and the Central Plains, there was no better buyer than the commanders of the Imperial Army. In his previous life, the reason why the price of Wuxia steel weapons from the Abbasid Caliphate could reach several 100,000 gold taels each was due to the presence of these Imperial Army leaders who viewed swords as their lives. As long as it was a weapon that was truly magnificent, sharp, and noble, and could display their noble status, these Imperial Army leaders were the best buyers who could afford the price. In this aspect, even the prestigious clans that were involved in the Wuxia steel business couldn't compare to them. In reality, most of the Imperial Army leaders came from prestigious backgrounds, and they weren't lacking in money at all. Some of the Imperial Army leaders came from prestigious clans. Wang Chong knew that there was no better target than these Imperial Army leaders to raise a huge sum of 90,000 gold taels in a short period of time. In reality, right from the start, Wang Chong's plan to strike it rich in Hyderabad was aimed at these extravagant and wealthy Imperial Army leaders. As long as the goods were good enough, these Imperial Army members would definitely be able to afford the price. However, out of respect for the royal family and the Imperial Army, most of the weapon merchants kept their distance from the Imperial Army. At this moment, other than Wang Chong, almost no one else had noticed the massive purchasing power that the Imperial Army possessed. Chapter 48. Wei Hao, I'll leave the matters here to you. My identity is a little sensitive, so it won't be convenient for me to appear for the time being. Help me hold the fort for the time being. Wang Chong sipped on his tea as he changed the topic. I know. You're worried about Yao Feng, right? Don't worry, leave the matters here to me. There won't be a problem. Wei Hao patted his chest confidently. Even though he had reservations about Wang Chong's plan to sell his sword, Wei Hao wasn't one to shirk responsibility. What was a brother for? A brother was here to help at this moment. Even though the Yao clan was powerful, the Wei clan wasn't one to be trifled with. As a duke, there was no need for them to fear the Yao clan. Yao Feng isn't the only one, Wang Chong chuckled. The matter at the vast Crane Pavilion wasn't the only matter that he had done. If Yao Guangyi were to know that he was the one who foiled his plans, he would probably skin him alive. The reason why Wang Chong wanted to sell his sword through Wei Hao's Blue Bottle Pavilion was because he didn't want to attract too much attention before his plan succeeded. Otherwise, if the Yao clan were to cause trouble for him and warn those who came to view the sword, it would be more than enough to annoy him. Let's not talk about this anymore. Come have some tea. Wang Chong filled Wei Hao's cup. As he sipped on his tea, he glanced at the scenery outside the railing. The first day of selling his sword didn't attract too many people. It was impossible for him to accomplish anything with just these few people. However, it was fortunate that Wang Chong didn't expect to sell his sword on the first day, so he wasn't in a hurry. Someone is coming. Suddenly, Wei Hao spoke. Wang Chang's heart jolted. He lifted his head and followed Wei Hao's gaze. A huge commotion could be seen in the distance. A huge group of people was walking toward the Blue Bottle Pavilion from the other end of the street. These people were split into 3 groups, and it was clear that they belonged to 3 different powers. However, they weren't separated from one another, and they were clearly comrades. Not good. It's the capital's Qing clan, Huang clan, and Lu clan. I'm afraid these people are here to cause trouble. Wei Hao was born into a wealthy family, and the people who came and went in his residence were all famous people. Furthermore, the Wei clan also had a smithy, so he immediately recognized the 3 swordsmithing clans the moment they appeared. His eyebrows couldn't help but twitch as he felt extremely uneasy. Judging from the other party's aura, Wei Hao did not think that the other party was here to buy the sword. What are you afraid of? Wang Chong glanced at it and put down the teacup. The capital has its own rules. Even swordsmithing clans wouldn't dare to act recklessly. These people must think that we're foreign aristocratic families or rich families that came to the capital to sell weapons. We've crossed the line. However, we are originally from the capital, so this rule does not apply to us. What are you afraid of? And this. Wei Hao was surprised. He didn't know much about this kind of thing, and didn't know that there was such a Dao in it. Are you sure? Yes. Wang Chong nodded. In his previous life, he had seen and experienced everything. Even though he looked like a 15-year-old on the outside, he knew much more than Wei Hao. Furthermore, during the turmoil in his previous life, he had come into contact with an old swordsmithing elder. As such, he was well aware of the rules here. This isn't good. They must have misunderstood. I need to quickly explain to them. Wei Hao panicked. There's no need for that. I still have use for them. Wang Chong held onto the lid of the tea gu and said calmly. Wei Hao was stunned. He stared at Wang Chong, and his mind was unable to process the situation. While Wei Hao was in a daze, the people from the Qing, Huang, and Lu clans arrived at the Blue Bottle Pavilion. They raised their heads and looked at the swords wrapped in black cloth hanging on the door. Where are the sword sellers? Isn't anyone coming? A burly, fat man who looked very arrogant squinted his eyes and crossed his arms. He glanced at the door of the building for a while and stared at the door for a while. His words were sharp as if he was saying, I'm here to cause trouble. Sir, are you here to buy a sword? A black-robed young attendant had already rushed out of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. This is your sword? The plump man glanced at him and asked. While he was speaking, everyone from the Qing, Huang, and Lu clan was looking at him. The man's name was Huang Jiao, and he was from the capital's Huang clan. Of the prestigious clans in the capital, there were blacksmiths and sword sellers, and naturally, there were those who were in charge of causing trouble. Huang Jiao was the most famous of them all. The capital was wealthy, and it was under the feet of the emperor. There were often people who didn't abide by the rules who would come to the capital to sell their swords. This wasn't the first or second time. In order to ensure that others understood the rules, as well as to protect their own interests. Thus, there were people like Huang Jiao in the Huang, Qing, and Lu clans. No, this is my master's sword. Oh, I heard that your clan sells swords for 600 gold taels each? Huang Jiao crossed his arms and spoke with a face full of ridicule. To sell swords before the Huang, Qing, and Lu clans was simply displaying one's slight skill before an expert. The attendant lowered his head and continued to smile along. Take down your swords and let me take a look, Huang Jiao said impolitely. His expression was still full of ridicule. If I'm satisfied with it, I might just buy it. The surrounding Huang, Qing, and Lu clans also looked on with ridicule. This was a common tactic used by the prestigious clans in the capital to deal with foreign powers. Using the excuse of buying a weapon to take a look at the other party's sword, they would then smash the other party's sword down forcefully, creating a gap or even splitting it into 2. By then, with so many people watching, it would be an embarrassing sight to behold. This was what it meant to cause trouble. In terms of swordsmithing, there were very few clans that could surpass the Huang, Qing, Lu, and Zhang clans. I'm sorry, but you can only buy our swords. You can't see or touch them." The manservant bowed with a smile on his face. "What, you can't look at them? Not even touch them?" In an instant, Huang Jiao, as well as everyone from the Huang, Cheng, and Lu clans, were stunned. 600 gold taels for a sword, and this wasn't silver or copper coins. Yet, they weren't even allowed to touch it? This was unprecedented. When the three great clans arrived, they didn't expect this at all. "I can't even look at it, not even touch it?" Huang Jiao asked once more. He couldn't believe his ears. Those who sold their swords in the capital would always try their best to show off before the crowd. Yet, this shop didn't even allow them to touch the expensive swords they were selling. "You can't." The attendant's voice was as calm as ever. "Who is your master? Call your master out. I would like to see what kind of sword he is for you to not even allow me to touch it." Huang Jiao bellowed furiously. "I don't know." The attendant's voice was as stiff as a rock. "You don't know? What do you mean?" Huang Jiao was taken aback. Then he sneered furiously. "You don't know where your master is? Or you don't know who your master is?" "I don't know who my master is." The attendant's reply was beyond everyone's expectations. Not just Huang Jiao, everyone was stunned as well. "Bullshit. Who doesn't know who their master is?" Huang Jiao flew into a rage. "But if you don't want to speak, I won't ask. Then let me ask you, what's so good about your sword? What gives you the right to set a price of 600 gold taels?" "I don't know." "What about the steel? You don't know where the ore is used to make it?" "I don't know." "How sharp is it? How much can it cut through?" "I don't know." The attendant's reply was as usual. His voice didn't change in the slightest, as if he would only ever say the same three words, "I don't know." This was Wang Chang's intention. Other than the words 600 gold taels and "I can't look at or touch it," there was no need for him to reply. "I don't know, I don't know. Other than that, what else do you know?" Huang Jiao was about to go insane from anger. He roared furiously, "If you don't have any skills, don't try to sell porcelain." Which sword seller doesn't allow others to look at it? If you can't look at or touch it, do you really think that you are the daughter of a duke? Playing to the gallery. Ooh. Hearing Huang Jiao's words, the other swordsmithing clans were taken aback for a moment before bursting into laughter. Even the crowd outside also burst into laughter. "What did I say? This is a bunch of clowns trying to play to the gallery. I wasn't wrong, right?" Huang Jiao pointed at the attendant and laughed heartily. His eyes were filled with disdain. "Before coming here, I was still worried that some formidable fellow might have come to the capital to wreak havoc. But from the looks of it now, it seems like we were worrying for nothing." Even though Huang Jiao's words are harsh, he isn't wrong in this matter. This clan is indeed playing to the gallery. A member of the Chung clan shook his head. The hostility in his eyes was no longer as intense as before, replaced by disdain. It was impossible for the other swordsmithing clans to use such a method to play tricks. As long as the capital's Qing clan used their name, it would be their reputation. There was no need for them to play tricks. Clearly, this clan didn't have any true capability. Even though the other clans didn't say anything, their gazes were the same. Those who were truly capable weren't afraid of others looking at their swords. Not only that, they even hoped for others to see and touch the prowess of their swords. There wasn't anyone like this clan in the capital. In the crowd's view, it was just as Huang Jiao had said, this clan was playing to the gallery. It would be a wonder if such swords could be sold. The Blue Bottle Pavilion is a place for drinking, but he actually came here to sell his swords. Furthermore, the price is so high. It seems like he's an outsider. We have overestimated him. The Lu clan members also had disdainful looks on their faces. The Blue Bottle Pavilion was richly decorated, and it was definitely one of the top-notch inns in the capital. Those who came here were either wealthy or influential, and most of them came from powerful backgrounds. For the other party to sell a sword for 600 gold taels at such a place, the other clans thought that some formidable foe had come to wreak havoc. But from the looks of it now, they were thinking too much. Once they realized the truth, their strategy changed. Disperse, disperse. This clan doesn't know anything, they are just playing to the gallery. Everyone, disperse. I wonder where this bastard came from to break the rules. What a waste of our time. What are the people from the Blue Bottle Pavilion thinking? The Huang, Cheng, and Lu clan members felt disinterested and they scattered in all directions. As they walked, they impatiently chased away the passers-by who were watching the commotion in front of the Blue Bottle Pavilion. Those bastards! Wei Hao, who was upstairs, heard their words clearly. He slammed the table angrily and stood up. It's just selling a sword in the capital, what has it got to do with them? Their mouths are filthy. Do they really think that the Huang, Cheng, and Lu clan are the most powerful clans in the capital? I don't believe that I can't deal with them. Wei Hao had grown up together with Wang Chong, and the only person he treasured the most was this good friend of his. To be scolded in front of him, Wei Hao felt extremely uncomfortable, and he was seething with rage. The capital's Cheng clan, Huang clan, and Lu clan might be famous, but it was useless against Wei Hao. How could a Gongzi from the Duke of Wei residence think highly of a swordsmithing clan? Wait a moment. A hand reached out to stop Wei Hao. Wang Chong's expression was calm, and he wasn't as agitated as Wei Hao. It's just a small matter, why get angry? Let them be, they are going to disperse soon anyway. As Wang Chong spoke, he slowly chewed on the tea leaves. This was a habit he had before he transcended. After drinking his tea, he would chew on the tea leaves. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.